Hello, everyone. This is Josh Freud. I'm a senior scientist for the Nature Conservancy, and I'd like to welcome you to World Fish Migration Day event called Rivers Full of Fish webinar. This is our North America event in lieu of a in-person event that was going to be in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And we all know how in-person events have gone this year. So let me share my screen. I'm so happy that you could all make it. It's a beautiful day here in New England, and it's always a shame to be inside, but I think we've got a great bunch of speakers today. I'm really happy that you could join. Some of you were here for the earlier webinar, part one. This is our part two is for transformational change, a movement for rivers. So it's both looking at some more details about how we can transform the entire system that creates dams and the power necessities around them, and change the paradigm such that we're looking more carefully at rivers as resources in their own right. So you'll note that at the bottom of your screen there is a chat button, and you can put in chats to introduce yourself to other folks on the call. You can also add comments along the way, but if you have a question for one of the presenters, you should put it in the question and answer button, which is also at the bottom of the screen. So we had a great presentation this morning from Darius Coombs of the Wampanoag Mashpee Nation down in Massachusetts, which is near Plymouth, which is where our event was going to be. It coincided with the 400th commemoration of the landing of the Pilgrims there, and it seemed fitting that we should, one, add on to that event, but also tell the story from the perspective of the indigenous peoples there, and what happened to their river over the ensuing 400 years, and what's happening to it now, thanks to people like Dave Gould, who you'll hear from, and many others who helped with those projects. We heard from John Waldman about the historic changes in rivers from settlement on, Bob Irvine about the changes that happened after. He's the CEO of American Rivers. Lynn Scarlett, who's our government relations lead for the Nature Conservancy, talked about policy that can affect change. George Pest about ecosystem change. And I already mentioned Dave Gould again from the town of Plymouth, but we also had a great talk from Carrie Selberg about sort of different perspectives of success and what that looks like. Herman Vonnechen is the executive director of the World Fish Migration Foundation. You'll hear from Herman later. But as we look at the second round of talks for this afternoon, and just to mention, those first talks are all recorded, so you're welcome to go to the recording after the event. Everyone who registered can get a link to the recordings. You'll see those as well as some of the videos and some other materials available. So for this afternoon, we've got, Darius can't make it this afternoon. We've got a video in lieu of Darius's that all fit into my presentation. Julie Tarini, Herman Vonnechen, Keith Ellenbergen with an incredible PowerPoint slide images from his underwater photography. David Gould will get a little bit more detail about his work in the town of Plymouth on Town Brook. Abby Archer about some of the successes of what's happened with fish after that. And then Herman will give us a little bit of a rousing talk about a call to action, what we can all do. But to get more information on all these speakers, please check the program. We're not going to spend our time and our speakers' time with the long introductions. They're all written out in the program that you received on registering, and then the confirmation of that. So again, I'm Josh Ray with the Nature Conservancy. Molly Payne-Wynn, Allison Bowden have been helping with this project as well. Eric Hutchinson from NOAA in Gloucester, Mass. David Gould, Town of Plymouth, we mentioned, and Herman. And then Nicole Friedman, who was also working very hard in the background to help pull this together. So thanks to the committee and also for sponsors who helped this. Not only did NOAA and the Nature Conservancy and others contribute time and money, but we also received funding and art and other videos from other folks listed here. So I work for the Nature Conservancy, which is a global nonprofit. We work in over 70 countries around the world. Our mission is to protect the lands and water that all life survive on. And we do this through two main strategies. One is around climate change, of course, which affects all the ecosystems on the planet. But I also have special projects for protecting lands, freshwater systems, protecting and restoring, and avoiding damage to freshwater systems, and then also for marine systems. So that's our work around the world. And my entree, if you will, out of land protection and really focusing on stream connectivity happened with this beautiful watershed right here, which is the Penobscot River watershed. Oh, I hear someone else talking background. Maybe you can self-mute if you aren't. But here's the watershed, and this is what it looked like for the past 180 years, basically. About 4% of the habitat for migratory fish was accessible. We tried trucking. There were a whole series of fish ladders that failed. And this is basically the situation for most of the 12 species of migratory fish that would have gone up and down this river over that time period. And
my ancestors,
hold on a second, I'm going to wait to share this because I want to make sure that I've got the video settings right, which they weren't. All right. Someone speak up since my video is off if this is not working.
River, literally thousands of years. And they gained all their necessities from life off the river. They had.
All right, let me try again.
We see your screen, but not the video itself.
Yeah. One more try. Tell me real quick if it doesn't work. Do you see it?
Yep.
Yes, that's it.
Literally millions of fish swing by this island and the other islands every spring to harvest for their sustenance. Over time, there grew this special relationship with the land and the Creator, between the people and Mother Earth and all her creatures. And as a child, I grew up here on the reservation on Indian Island and spent most of my youth on the river. This was our playground. Growing up in the 50s, there was no sea-run fish. All the sea-run fish were blocked because of the dams that were below here. But I always dreamed that someday the dams would be removed. But I never thought in my lifetime I would ever see dams being removed from the Penobscot River and a section being free-flowing again, as my ancestors experienced it. The Penobscot River Restoration Project is really a unique collaboration between an Indian tribe, 7 conservation groups, the power company, the federal government, and the state of Maine. And I say this is unique because in the past we've had numerous disputes. The Penobscot River Restoration Trust has brought all these groups together in this unique collaboration, all on the same page, all working for the restoration of the Penobscot River. Their forethought and their planning have created this project that is beneficial to everyone. It's beneficial to the power companies. It's beneficial to the municipalities along this river. It's beneficial to the fish, beneficial to the Penobscot Nation. And this project is literally a dream come true for me. And I can't wait for the day that I see the sea-run fish, which I call the refugees of the Penobscot River, return once again to their ancestral spawning ground and to our home, the Penobscot Nation.
Josh, you need to unmute.
You're right. You hear me now?
Yes.
Hello? Good. So that amazing account of the river and the connection between the Penobscot Indian Nation, a nation that was never displaced from co-host us to start your video. Here we go. Is that better?
Yep.
Good. Don't know what's going on. But this nation has always been on the Penobscot River There's a Penobscot County, Town of Penobscot. They've always been here. So restoring fish to this river was important, not only for the villages and towns, but the ancestral people of this river. So this project included removing dams closest to the river, bypassing another. Let me speed up a bit. And here's the removal of the Gray Works Dam, the beginning of the VC Dam. And this is a bypass around Howland Dam, which needed to stay for a lot of reasons. But the story didn't end at the main stem river. We also needed to look more heavily at the headwaters where most of the best habitat is. And here's where surveys needed to be done. We were able to get crews out around the watershed to find a lot of culverts like this that weren't passing fish. They weren't getting to the primest of habitat. And this is what it looks like when we completed the survey for the entire state of Maine. More than 27,000 barriers were surveyed around the state, finding that most of them are barriers to fish in one way or another and other wildlife. So that leads us to focus limited restoration dollars to fixing culverts like this, to bridges like this. The response is pretty incredible when you look at the change in not only the sea run fish, but the bird life that's monitored around the river, the native fish communities in the river, the marine environment just offshore, and especially this river herring population, which went from nearly zero to just about 2.8 million, over 2.8 million fish. Similarly, the economic benefit was felt local towns where there are harvests. This is actually data from the Kennebec. So river restoration works, fish come back, and has huge impacts for people that live around these rivers. It also seems to have an impact on the ground fish populations off the shore. We're monitoring that, but there's a lot of good signs that there's a response to those fisheries as well. Note also that these fish are used for bait for the lobster industry, and these fish this past year were also harvested and used for food relief for folks in Haiti. We mentioned the tribe. There's also recreational benefits, paddling in the river. There's community connections along all the sites up and down the river where dams were removed or altered that are now parks. And there's much more fishing for things like American shad, which there hadn't been. So that's the end of my introduction to part one of this. Next up is Julie Turini, and I will stop sharing my screen and invite Julie to share her screen, unless I'm sharing it.
You're sharing screen, yes.
I'm sharing your screen right now.
Yes, you are.
So
Thanks, Joe.
Julie, introduce yourself briefly since I can't multitask.
Cool. So thanks, Josh. And good afternoon, evening to all of you. So I get to talk to you a little bit about how philanthropy can best support dam removal and river restoration. And I'll do this through the lens of our Open Rivers Fund. For those of you who don't know already, the Open Rivers Fund is a 10-year, $50 million dam removal program for the Western United States that was launched by Resources Legacy Fund in 2016 in partnership with the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. The program is capitalized by a grant from the Hewlett Foundation that they made in celebration of their 50-year anniversary. Very generous. A few words on our thinking behind why this was the right time to get philanthropy hooked on dam removal. Really, there are three reasons. There's the novelty still, there's the need, and then there's the return on investment. A little on the novelty. We all know about those big dam removals over the past 20 years across the nation. You've heard about many of them today. Philanthropy supported many of those projects, which is great, but they did it on a sort of project by project basis. But there had yet to be a philanthropic program focused specifically on bringing a systematic approach to dam removal. Hewlett and Resources Legacy Fund saw the opening and jumped in. So a little bit on the need. We all know about the looming numbers. The average life of a dam is 50 years. There's an estimated 2.1 million dams now over 50 years in age across the United States, many of them in the West. So as we all endlessly talk about the need to rebuild our aging infrastructure, what made sense to communities nearly a century ago, when many of these dams were built, simply don't make sense today. Many of these dams no longer serve any purpose, yet cause environmental harm. and bring safety, financial, and liability headaches to dam owners and local communities alike. Finally, we know that dam removals are expensive and time-consuming and complicated. These projects are very compelling in the significant conservation benefits that can be achieved, in many instances immediately. This return on investment always piques the interest of private funders. So again, this is what Hewlett was really interested in, is to see the significant conservation benefits that could be achieved. Next slide, please. And I assume you all know that's Matilaha Dam in Ventura County on the first slide. So here we are in Rattlesnake Creek Dam, which just came down in Rattlesnake Creek. Rattlesnake Creek Dam came down just this past August. As we developed the program, it quickly became clear to us that for it to be successful, particularly in the West, we would need to work with local communities to help them address their obsolete dams, modernize their water infrastructure, and restore their rivers for fish and people. This led us to our program goals. So by the end of the program, what do we want to accomplish? We want to first improve the ecological conditions of Western rivers. Second, create diverse political and community support for dam removal. And third, build new tools, policies, and funding to accelerate and sustain dam removal so the effort continues after the life of the program. How are we doing this? Primarily, we're investing in actual projects, because the goal here is to prove success with completed projects in watersheds that local communities support, and then build that momentum with the success stories. So our projects are purposefully diverse, as are the partners we are working with. We are intentionally building a portfolio of projects of varying sizes, structures, and functions in different watersheds, so we can demonstrate that broad range of dam removal benefits and then test and refine our approaches. We intend to see projects through to completion, so are carefully adding projects into the portfolio in these early years so we can be sure to do that. Specifically, we are supporting our partners' highest priority needs. This means needs across the life cycle of a project. That includes design, permitting, planning, fundraising, public education and community engagement, communications, project management, deconstruction, monitoring, restoration, pretty much whatever the compelling need is for funding. We're also supporting efforts to build the capacity for project partners so they can more effectively do this work, and to build the field of dam removal overall. This includes providing communication support for projects so partners can share project success stories. We're doing this by engaging a videographer, photographer that shoots video and photos of all our projects, and then we share those that content with our partners so that they can use that in doing their projects. We're engaging federal and state policy efforts to simplify permitting and otherwise support dam removal projects. And we're also working to create more public funding for dam removal at the federal and state level, and to encourage additional private funders to invest in dam removal. Next slide, please. So where's the program today? We're now 4 years into the program. You can see from this program map that we have built a robust project portfolio across the West. We are currently supporting projects in 44 watersheds across 9 Western states. Again, these projects are purposefully diverse, varying in size, structure, function, complexity, geography, ownership, funders, and community profile. And our project partners, again, also diverse. We are working with government entities, nonprofits, tribes, businesses, landowners, funders, universities. And we're particularly focused on providing direct support to tribes so they can actively engage in projects at all levels, including leading the effort when they so choose. Currently, we are working with 15 tribes across 13 dam removal projects. As of this fall, our Dams Down reel shows 27 dams removed in 6 states, opening over 170 stream miles for people and fish. Next slide, please. All right, this is Rattlesnake Creek Dam before it came down, and our videographer who's shooting underwater. So I'll just conclude with a few observations of how philanthropy can best support dam removal. First, it is more than just writing checks for a specific project, although that's obviously very important. We're here to support our partners by engaging directly with decision makers when needed, making connections to address technical needs, sharing lessons learned from other projects, lifting their stories, and in any other ways that make sense. Second, we know that the checks we write need to be strategic. This means bringing funding into projects at the right time and for the most strategic purpose, and in ways that leverage and do not supplant available public funding. Sometimes this means coming into a project really early to help local partners resolve threshold funding or liability issues and bring a project onto a viable course forward. And it often means just covering those costs that public funding just simply can't pay for, such as early conceptual design, project management, and monitoring after the dam is down. Finally, I always encourage funders to think about long-term investments, particularly in the dam removal space. With this 10-year Open Rivers Fund program, we have the opportunity to invest in longer-term projects and to work on building a movement that dispels the mythology that has surrounded dam removal throughout the West for too many years by demonstrating success. This is both a luxury of a 10-year program, but also a responsibility that we all take very seriously. I could go on for hours. Next time, I hope to be able to show you some of our specific projects, but I know we got time limits here, and so I'll just end and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was fantastic. Appreciate it. And for folks, there is a chat box. It is there. It's there for, sorry.
So we're out here at the.
There is also a question and answer box, which if you've got questions for any of the speakers, please put them in there. They can answer while we're speaking. And you can also, everyone can see the questions and the answers there. So it's kind of handy for things that you might be wondering about yourself. So this next video that I'm going to show is from work in the southeastern US. And it looks like I will mute myself and we'll see what they're doing in Georgia.
So we're out here at the Chattahoochee Fall line where we've got 2 dam removal projects. There are a series of 3 ponds. The ones that have been breached have created a pretty unstable situation in the stream channel. So the work we're going to do there is to partially remove what's left of the dams and stabilize the banks, and then do some work to restore the stream channel itself.
So this is a partnership between Columbus State University and the Nature Conservancy. We're not only studying this restoration, but we have control sites, are streams that are still intact. And we are able to find some beautiful intact stream segments. So we not only get to study populations in a disturbed habitat, but we can also study populations in streams that are undisturbed.
Dr. Keller and I are using invertebrates, mainly insect larvae and crayfish, to evaluate restoration in the stream in terms of the connectivity of populations. The idea being that the dam created a barrier to insect movement and to crayfish movement.
So right now the velocities are about 0.02%. So we had a course this semester on aquatic ecosystem restoration and had the students present at the Society of Biological Restoration Conference. And our goal is to kind of make this a continued living classroom, because we want to have multiple years of data, and as we improve our methods, we'll hopefully continue to have good data and train the next round of scientists.
This particular case, there's an existing dam and the pipe on the back side of the dam is failing. And we're luckily here, we were upstream, we were able to find a very nice reference reach. And you survey that to the nth degree and you've got the design criteria and you've got things drawn, then you create a stream that'll be self-sustaining.
Start to see now that they're clearing out the floodplain here a bit where the channel is going to go. So I'm standing on the dam. They're going to notch out this piece right here. And eventually the channel, which historically was down about 500 feet in front of me or so, will be coming right past here and connect back up with the old channel again.
I think a lot of landowners underestimate the importance that these streams serve and the barriers that these earthen dams create to some of the things that they care about, like the game fish populations, like bass, sunfish, run up in these small creeks to spawn, to seek refuge.
There has been so much alteration. I mean, when we were looking for reference sites for a time, I thought we might not be able to find any because it's just so altered everywhere we look. I mean, the whole idea of this project, in addition just to improving these streams, is to learn from what this type of work does so that we can replicate or maybe do things differently in other similar places.
There we go. Neat project in Georgia. It's fun to see all the varieties of work that's going on. And it's good to remember that free-flowing rivers aren't just about fish, even though we call this World Fish Migration Day. And that's what Herman invented so many years ago in 2013 for our first one in 2014. But Herman is now going to, he's the director of the World Fish Migration Foundation. He's going to show us some presentation of some of the work happening around the world. Take it away, Herman, and thank you.
Okay, just to see if, do you see the slide?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, thanks Josh for the introduction and thank you all for attending. I'm Herman, I'm the director of the World Fish Migration Foundation in the Netherlands, and we are working on a global level with the mission to save migratory fish in rivers because we love fish. We love fish that migrate through rivers. We love salmon, we love tigerfish, all kinds of species, catfish, and so on. Okay, how does this work? But what we don't love is that we see fish getting stuck, like these salmons in Sweden in front of a trash rack, or banging their head against walls, against dams, against weirs. We don't like that at all. And what was happening in the past years is that we have been, past decades, past centuries, that we have been drowning our rivers. And drowning our rivers by creating dams, but also for a good reason, because we want to have hydropower, we want to have drinking water, irrigation water. But by doing that, we have been drowning our rivers and we have created a problem for fish. In Europe, we are counting almost 1 million barriers in total. It's about culverts, dams, weirs, and I just understood from Bob Irvin that it's about 2 million in the US. So there's a lot, and there's a lot to gain and to win as well. If you look at the recent Living Planet Index for migratory fish, which was published in July this year, you see that there is a decrease of 76% of 50 years ago, and it's going really, it really is going bad with the migratory fish around the world, and in Europe it's even worse. So we need to do something about that. That's what we feel. That's what we want to do. And this is the team where I'm talking about. There's also the volunteers, people all around the world helping us out to create awareness for migratory fish, but also think about solutions. And we want to celebrate success stories and challenges together. So success stories like new fishways, dam removals, and we want to make people proud around the world. So we want to connect with people who are having showcase projects and share them all around the world. And this is our vision, and our vision is to have rivers full of fish. And that's also the title of this webinar. And I really like the fact that we are now thinking about rivers full of fish again, productive rivers. And also between the sea and the source. And from New Zealand to Hawaii. So it's all connected, it's global, and it's from local to global. And we want to connect fish, rivers, and people. And we are creating a global movement of people that all want to do something about this. And World Fish Migration Day is a day where this all comes together. And the global symbol for this day and for the people in this movement is the happy fish. And it's so nice to see that all around the world you see this happy fish statue, you see happy fish t-shirts, and people really take this as a symbol for free migration of fish. And one of the projects that we are doing is called Swimways. And at this moment we are working on a report together with the IUCN and the Cambridge Conservation Initiative, and we are developing maps of swimways of fish. So we are showing which routes fish need in different parts of the world. It's a first step, but we want to work for the next years. We want to do more, and we're going to launch this report on the 12th of November at an event, a global swimways event. And if you follow this link on this slide, you can register for that. In 2011, I saw this dam removal in the Elwha River, and George Pesch just in the last session, he mentioned this project, and it was for me an eye-opener. 2011, and it was 9 years ago, and it was the first time I saw a project like this. So I thought, how can we do something similar in Europe? How can we start a discussion about removing dams and make it a viable option for river managers? And we started Dam Removal Europe, and Dam Removal Europe is a movement to support practitioners. And it's supported, and it's a partnership of WWF, the Nature Conservancy, Rivers Trust. I see, there they are, the Rivers Trust, Wetland International, and Rewilding Europe. And it's a positive movement that wants to make dam removal a viable option for river managers. And our mission is to save free-flowing rivers in Europe. And we're also counting, based on that 1 million dam figure, but we're also counting that there are 100,000 sites which are old and obsolete and can be easily removed, like this dam in Spain. And this one is already removed by now. But there are also projects like this one in Estonia, where they are opening up a river by removing 8 dams, 6 or 8 dams, and they're restoring 3,000 kilometers of free-flowing river. And in France, on the right, you see a dam of 200 meters wide and 35 meters high, which is currently being removed, or actually it is already removed, and it's opening up 90 kilometers of river. And what's even also really nice to mention is that the EU Biodiversity Strategy, which was announced in March 2020, has now a goal of 25,000 kilometers of free-flowing rivers. So the European Union is now has a new biodiversity goal, which is really special. And now all the countries in Europe have to deal with this target and are now going to look into this topic. And on the website damremoval.eu, you can find all kinds of case studies throughout Europe. So not only the big ones, but also the small ones, because there are more small ones than big ones. And also the small dams create problems. And that dam removal Europe story, and also the dam removal stories from America, from the US, has inspired us to start something even bigger on a global level, and that's called Dam Removal Global. And that's something that's new that we want to start up, and we want to start that together with all kinds of organizations around the world. So with American Rivers, with the Nature Conservancy, to get this topic on the policy makers, that policymakers around the world are going to include this in their goals. So also in South Africa, for example, and in the nice thing about South Africa, that the Kruger National Park is already removing dams, and that's a really nice showcase. I'm going to show you what happened on World Fish Migration Day 2 years ago. This was happening there, so take a look.
John. Okay, firing on 0, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. Okay, testing for continuity. Done.
So yeah, that inspired us to, and at the foundation to look even on a global level to this topic. And now we are in contact with organization in South Korea, and in South Korea there are also plans to remove dams, and also in Japan, in New Zealand, and so on. So we think that this is the time to start this movement, and you're invited. Thank you very much, and thank you for all these organizations for making this possible.
Thank you, Herman. It's great to see what's happening around the world, and very inspiring. And it's great that there is an organization that pulls it all together, like the World Fish Migration Foundation. So if you can stop sharing, we'll get Keith Allenbergen, who's a professional photographer. He's going to be giving us a slideshow of some of his work around underwater. Am I frozen up?
You're good.
Okay, maybe it's Herman frozen up. Herman, can you unshare your screen? There we go. And Keith, if you're there, if you could share your screen, I'm really looking forward to seeing some of your imageries. I've seen some of it online as we were looking at different speakers, and I'm super excited to have you join us here today. Thank you.
Thanks. I can't unmute my video either, though, so I don't know if that impacts anything.
Try now.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Hey, everyone. All right, let me try and do this then. Let me just share this. And can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So just like to start by thanking the World Fish Migration Day for inviting me this afternoon. As a quick introduction, my name is Keith Allenbergen. I'm an underwater wildlife photographer focusing on marine conservation. I currently reside in Boston and New York, and have been fortunate to travel around the world on conservation-based photography assignments. I'm an associate professor of photography at SUNY, the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, and a visiting artist at MIT Sea Grant in Cambridge. We live in a world connected by oceans, in which fish migration and movement is both dramatic and strategic. Some fish, like these snipefish, were photographed within the crystal clear blue waters of the Azores, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. These fish migrate within a vertical plane, descending to depths beyond my abilities to free dive, the limits of technical scuba diving, and into a world of near or full darkness. Other species, like the endangered Atlantic bluefin tuna, migrate horizontally great distances, ignoring boundaries between states, countries, and continents. There's so much we don't know and so much to learn. Many scientists, some maybe here today, are researching the migration of Atlantic bluefin tuna. It's hard to imagine that these incredible fish are believed in part to migrate from the east coast of the United States to the Mediterranean Sea. I spent 3 months on a photography assignment documenting the Atlantic bluefin tuna during its annual migration to reproduce, and the Persane fishing boats that followed them. In a modern world, we take photography for granted. We think just go in the water, pull the trigger, auto everything, and you get your shot. But the art of photography is controlling the camera, the settings, to create the image you want. Wildlife photography, especially underwater, requires hours of patience, even tedium, followed by seconds of excitement when the critical elements of movement, behavior, light, and composition all come together into a single frame that creates an emotional connection. These ocean giants are one of the most amazing fish I've ever photographed. They can accelerate to burst speeds of 45 miles an hour. To give you a sense of the power, when I was in the water with a tuna, I could feel the acceleration as the water reverberated through my chest, almost like being in a concert, feeling the sound of music ripple through my body. One of the most extraordinary animal migrations occurs each year off the coast of South Africa, within the Indian Ocean, in which billions, that's right, billions of sardines form one of the largest animal migrations. This enormous biomass attracts all the predators, including people. From below, near the surface, a small tuna, I think this is a skipjack, attacked the bait ball with rapid speed that in part seemed to corral the fish into a tight formation. Sharks appear to take a different approach, swimming through the bait ball, picking off a fish here or there. In fact, I think they somehow enjoyed swimming through the dense school of fish, watching the sardines spread apart to give them space. Perhaps by swimming through the bait ball over and over again, they keep the fear level high and maintain an easy source of food. Dolphins showcased a different strategy by accelerating through the bait ball, scattering the fish. Just out of frame, 3 dolphins lined up in a row, and they did something completely amazing. They appeared to look at one another. One made a head nod. As an aside, maybe they were even communicating at a frequency and in a language that I cannot hear or understand. But either way, the visual cue was unmistakable, almost like ready, set, go. And then the dolphin pounced on the sardines, this one right in front of my lens. By the way, the visual cue was very helpful for me too. I do feel bad for these fish. There's nowhere to be safe. The attack is from everywhere. From above, the seabirds would dive into the water at such incredible speed that it sounded like a cannon blast scattering everything. But the birds targeted the unsuspecting fish with extreme precision. I'm from New England, and I thought I'd share a few fish migration stories that occur along our shores. From the air on board a small Cessna, each spring and summer, menhaden migrate to feed within our nutrient-rich inshore waters. This photograph highlights the enormous size, scale, and density of schooling fish. In fact, it's so dense that the color of the sea changes. From an underwater perspective, the menhaden feed voraciously. Photography within New England waters are challenging. The seas are often rough, the water is cold, the visibility is limited, ranging from 0 to 20 feet. But within these inshore conditions where the menhaden feed, the visibility is often literally near 0. In fact, sometimes I can't even see the menhaden feeding. I do think one of the most beautiful fish that migrate between the inshore and offshore waters of New England are mackerel, with their iridescent greens and blues that illuminate the ocean. But to get the fish's perspective, I have to jump in the water to photograph them. Now, this may seem like an easy task, just jump in and get my shot, but life isn't that simple. The primary challenge is that schooling fish have learned to keep a distance beyond the predator and just beyond the reach of my strobes. But on this day, for one reason or another, a school of mackerel surrounded me for a brief moment, and I was able to create an image that showcases a critically important species of fish that are part of a dynamic food web. When photographing mackerel, I realized that their dazzling coloration, texture, and schooling behavior make it hard for our eye to focus on any one individual fish. And I guess that's why they school. From the ocean into our rivers, these fish, like so many fish, whether we know it or not, are part of our culture and our environment. As an underwater wildlife photographer, I focus on capturing compositions that reveal the complexities and interactions between animal and the environment. This image focuses on the opposing forces in nature, the movement of a school of river herring swimming upstream and the water flowing rapidly downstream. The incredible power these fish have is just awe-inspiring. Each year, river herring migrate from the Atlantic Ocean into our rivers and streams and eventually into the lakes where they spawn and reproduce. Unlike salmon, they do not die, but rather return to the ocean. Unfortunately, in a modern world, many of these rivers and streams have been dammed, and access to the lakes is just not possible from human development. But I want to just highlight that fortunately, communities like Town in Plymouth, where a lot of these photos of herring have been taken, have become leaders in improving fish ladders, and most recently in transforming the brook and the stream into a natural environment that enables the herring to reach their final destination. The result has been incredible. I've observed a dramatic increase in populations, while not scientific, just in my personal observation, and it's been immediately obvious. At the most extreme juncture where the water is moving fastest and the visibility is just about a complete whiteout, the fish build up a momentum and accelerate forward. It's just incredible. This is one of the most challenging images that you would never know by just looking at it. As I'm fighting the current with all my strength to stay in position, to keep the snorkel in my mouth, to hold the camera stable, and the fish just move in and out of it with no problem at all. These fish, like any great athlete, have high oxygen demand, and the turbulent waters seem to make sure they have it. When I look at a river herring, I'm inspired, not by bait fish, but rather by one of the most beautiful fish with a golden hue tinted in pinks and yellows. But it's not just their beauty that catches my attention. It's their drive to reach goals, which seem almost against all the odds. It's what I call real inspiration. The herring's last burst of speed as it accelerates beyond the fish ladder into calm water, with the sky and trees that symbolize a connection between land and sea. Connected to the river herring, the American eel has a similarly dramatic story. These fish live within the rivers and streams along the northeast of North America. And after living for about 20 plus or minus years within the river or a lake, they migrate into the Atlantic Ocean, travel to the Sargasso Sea, to the waters too deep to photograph, and in one last hurrah, have a night to remember, releasing sperm and egg. Somehow the larvae flow into the gyres. The larvae then drift up with the current, swimming with the current. And then unbelievably, the larvae seem to be able to choose the river that they want to go into. And so long as there's access, they're able to make it up river into the lakes. And if conditions permit, over the next 20 years, they will repeat this cycle. Photography has the power to change our understanding of the world around us. And it is my goal to use the artistry of underwater photography to transform public perception that sparks our imagination, inspires conservation, and builds local stewardship about the extraordinary underwater wildlife of fish migrating around the world. Today is World Fish Migration Day, is a celebration that serves as a reminder that these fish and their environmental stories are a symbol of sustaining a healthy ocean planet for years to come. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or comments or just wish to say hi. Hope you enjoy and thank you.
Wow, Keith, fantastic. What a gorgeous bunch of photos, amazing photos. Thank you so much for sharing those. Thanks for putting on your mask and snorkel and getting in there and finding them and waiting for the light and all that stuff. Maybe you can stop sharing your screen, and a buddy of yours, David Gould, is up next. David Gould is the Director of Marine and Environmental Affairs in the town of Plymouth, again, where we were supposed to have this event live. And he's going to share some of the incredible work that's been done over many years to free Town Brook. So Dave, if you're there and can unmute and share your screen, I want to thank you for putting this together for us.
Hi, I'm David Gould, Director of Marine and Environmental Affairs for the historic town of Plymouth, Massachusetts. I'm standing along the banks of Town Brook, which has been the site of ongoing river restoration work for over 2 decades. I want to say thank you to those long-standing project partners that have stood with us over that time: the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, the NOAA Restoration Center.
Once again, it's always a trick sharing these things. Make sure that it's maximized for viewing, and that would include, there we go.
Site of ongoing river restoration work for over 2 decades. I want to say thank you to those long-standing project partners that have stood with us over that time: the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, the NOAA Restoration Center, and of course, the residents of the town of Plymouth for making it all happen. We've also worked with a terrific engineering group called My Lone Make Room, and they put together a terrific video that highlights some of the work that's been done over the last 20 years. And you're about to have the opportunity to watch that right now. So I hope you enjoy the video, and I wish everyone around the world a happy World Fish Migration Day.
Excellent, thank you. And do we have, Dave, you've got another video as well, is that right?
Yeah, I'm gonna go share it for him. This is Megan. I'm pulling it up. One moment.
And while we're waiting, if you haven't gotten to Plymouth, Mass to see this project, a series of projects, I should say, it's incredible, one after another, and now with great video for monitoring not only the alewives but also the eels. They've got electronic counting systems, and it's all in a beautiful historic site in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And Plymouth Plantation is just a 5-minute drive away, which is worth seeing too. Here we go. Thank you for queuing that up. Fantastic. What a great tour of that brook. You can't even get that live, but an amazing string of projects letting in fish and allowing people to walk up and down the shoreline. There's parks along the way, there's walkways. I'll be Europe after the next video, which is on Coho in the Eel River from the Pacific Northwest. And off to my screen, and we go.
Salmon are definitely an iconic species, especially here on the Eel River, which is the third largest salmon run here in California. Salmon are extremely important for the ecology of Northern California forest. They bring those marine-derived nutrients all the way from the ocean up, and they essentially feed the forests and they feed the critters that live in the forest.
When you hear the kind of stories from the old timers about the runs were so thick you could walk across the salmon's back or you could catch them with pitchforks. I mean, it just gives you an idea of how present they were on the landscape. We have witnessed in a relatively short amount of time a rapid decline in the populations of coho. In California, annual returns across the state for coho salmon in the 1940s would have been in the numbers of about 400,000. And now we're looking at anywhere from 2 to 10% of those kinds of returns.
When our owners purchased the Humboldt Redwood Company lands, there was a deep desire to get these forests back to their former glory.
And we're really fortunate here on the North Coast that we do have timber companies that really value restoration as a part of their business.
Humboldt Redwood Company allows us to come on their land and restore the habitat.
During a really strong rain event, the creeks swell up bank to bank and these fish have no escape. The water is so turbid that they can't see in front of their faces, let alone find little bits of food to eat. So coho are particularly good at sniffing out those off channels and those clean water inlets, and they follow them up into slackwater areas such as these, where normally they would be fighting for their lives. The temperature and the dissolved oxygen are such that these fish can not only persist, but they can thrive. And we know that because we pit tag them and we recapture them all summer long, and we can get growth rates on those same identical fish.
Fresh fish.
Freshy. Look at that guy. 15.4 grams. How many you got?
Oh my goodness. My whole career is revolving around the coho salmon, and to have them appear the first year after construction, that really means a lot.
You have a certain responsibility when you own lands like this and have the opportunity to bring back habitat for these fish. Since we put these projects in, it really has taken on a life of, boy, build it and they will come.
We couldn't do recovery without our partners. You can definitely do a lot more when you have everyone on board and everyone's shaking their head yes as to moving forward with projects like these that benefit coho salmon.
Here we go. Well, pretty neat project up in the Pacific Northwest. Got to fit some more salmon in the show. It's not all about our East Coast fish, but we do love our East Coast fish, don't we, Abby? And Abby Archer is up next. Abby Archer is Fisheries and Aquaculture Specialist at Woods Hole Sea Grant. And welcome, and look forward to hearing about your study, which brings us back to our amazing fish in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you, Josh. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Abigail Franklin Archer, and I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a river called Town Brook, and a town called Plymouth, and a dam called the Holmes Dam. The river herring in that river would come from the salty ocean, switch their bodies to be in the fresh water, and then try to swim their way upstream to the spawning pond where they would lay their eggs. But to get to the spawning pond, they first had to overcome the 16-foot tall Holmes Dam. And to scale that height, they encountered a series of swimming challenges. So the first was to choose the correct path. The second was to swim up 2 steep pass fishways through a dark tunnel. And on the other end of that tunnel, they found a 202-foot long Daniil fish ladder. Then they went through another tunnel, and then a pool and weir fish ladder, and then the impoundment. And so with those challenges behind them, they could then swim another mile to reach the spawning ponds. But not all of them made it through. So the humans that lived in the town of Plymouth and the state of Massachusetts and the country of the United States cannot talk to fish. They don't know how. But because they were kind and understanding humans, they had a sense that this was not fun for the fish, that it was hard, and that not all the fish were making it through. So they decided to remove the dam. And because these kind and understanding humans were also curious, they wanted to know if removing the dam really helped the fish. And if yes, how it helped the fish. Because sometimes humans need numbers to understand things, and that's okay. So they decided, before the dam was removed, to quantify the fish passage in terms of percent passage, the number of times the herring tried to swim upstream past the dam, so that's the number of attempts, and then how long it took them to swim past, the transit time. So these curious humans don't know how to talk to fish, but they do know how to watch and track the fish. They just took the same system that tracks cars on roads, and they applied it to fish in water. So they tagged some fish, they set up some listening places, watching places called antennas, and when a tagged fish swam past a listening place, the humans would hear something like, "Hi, I have tag 105, and I am right here, right now." And so the humans took that information and they learned, so they set up listening stations along the river. So 1, 2, and 3 is where the steep pass fishways are. 4, 5, and 6 was the 202-foot long Daniil. And then here is the impoundment. And by watching and listening to the fish in this way, the curious humans learned that 269 fish tried to swim beyond the Holmes Dam, but only 67 of them made it to the top. So the percent passage estimate in 2018 was only 25%. The next year, the humans removed the dam. No longer did the fish have to choose a path. There was only one way up. And that dark tunnel turned into just a quick shadow. And the 202-foot long Daniil fish ladder turned into a river. And the kind and understanding humans were so happy. They were so happy that they had a party and they invited the whole community and people from all around to watch the fish together. And they invited their leaders. The curious humans wanted to show their leaders how the fish could be watched. So 5 fish lent a fin and were tagged and placed in buckets. 1 fish in 1 bucket for each leader. And the leaders took turns returning the fish to the water. So first, there was Mr. Darius Coombs from the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, who's also the director of the Wampanoag and Algonquian interpretation at Plymouth Patuxet, formerly known as Plymouth Plantation. There's Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, who did not bring waiters that day, so I released the fish for him. There's Congressman Bill Keating, and then the Massachusetts Commissioner of the Department of Fish and Game, Ron Amidan. Eric Derleth, Supervisor of the Wildlife Program at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Michael Pentony, who's the Regional Administrator at the Greater Atlantic Regional Fisheries Office for NOAA Fisheries. They shared a bucket and a fish. So when the Holmes Dam was across the river, it took fish an average of 8 hours to swim through all those obstacles. So starting from the beginning of the Daniil fish ladder, all the way up to the bridge that you saw behind David Gould's when he was introducing the video. So after the dam was removed, Mr. Coombs's fish made, so instead of 8 hours, it then took 3.4 hours for the fish to travel that same distance. His fish arrived at the spawning grounds 12 hours after release, spent 20 days in the spawning grounds, and then traveled downstream back out to Plymouth Bay. Congressman Keating's fish made that in 3.5 hours instead of 8 hours, arrived at Billington Sea 7 hours after release, but wasn't detected traveling downstream, so likely died in Billington Sea after spawning. But that's okay, because that fish probably, possibly, became food for a fish like a smallmouth bass or a largemouth bass, or a bird species like a great blue heron or a osprey. Governor Baker's fish decided not to travel upstream. This fish traveled downstream and then spent 8 hours in a pond called the Jenny Gristmill Pond. And then after that time, exited the river through the Jenny Gristmill fish ladder and then out through Brewster Gardens at the mouth of the river. Given the amount of time she spent there, I think it's likely that she spawned in Jenny Gristmill before heading back downstream out to Plymouth Bay. Commissioner Ron Avedon's fish traveled the restored river reach in 4.8 hours, arrived at Billington Sea 8 hours after release, and also was not detected traveling downstream, so probably died in Billington Sea, and could have become a meal for a mammal like an otter or a reptile like a snapping turtle, or perhaps a bird species like an American eagle, a bald eagle. And then the last bucket that was released, Eric Derleth and Michael Pentony shared this fish. Their fish made it up in the restored reach 3.7 hours, arrived at Billington Sea about 7 hours after release, spent 19 days in the spawning grounds, and then traveled back out to Plymouth Bay. So what became of the fish that went back out to sea? Well, we don't really know. But it's possible that they became food for a cod or a haddock or a striped bass or a bluefish. And these are all the fish species that humans eat and make their livelihoods from catching or taking other people out to catch them. So that same year in 2019, so the dam had been removed, 395 more fish were tagged, and antennas were placed in the same places that they were located before the dam was removed. And by watching and listening to those fish swim by, the humans learned that before the dam was removed, we know that the estimate was 25% passed beyond the dam. After the dam removal, the estimate was 92%. Before, the fish made between 1 and 9 tries to get past the dam. After the dam was removed, the fish made between 1 and 4 attempts to get past that same stretch of river. And before, it took the fish anywhere between 30 minutes and 28 hours to get from the beginning of that dark tunnel all the way up to the impoundment, at the very beginning of the impoundment. And on average, it took them 4 hours. After the dam was removed, the range was between 18 minutes and 9 hours. Then you can measure the average in minutes instead of hours. So the average went from 4 hours to 53 minutes. And then, the most important question of all, did the fish get to the spawning pond? So before, the estimate was 22.3%, and after, it was 82.6%. So did the removal of the Holmes Dam improve river herring passage? The fish told the kind and understanding humans, yes, it did help. And the humans said, thank you. And they took their kindness and their understanding and their curiosity, and they brought it to another part of this river where the fish are stuck, and to other rivers where there are other dams and where there are more fish in need of some help. The end.
Fantastic, Abby. Oh my gosh. Thank you for your presentation, even more so for your style. You're invited to any webinar I'm hosting. That was absolutely fantastic. It would have been fun to see you live, but you did a great job with the video, and I appreciate that so much. We're slightly ahead of schedule, but I'm going to ask Herman if he will jump on. He's going to be talking about Happy Fish, showing a couple of videos, and we've got a call to action as well, which I will follow up on. So Herman, when you're ready.
Yeah, this is maybe something a little bit different. This is about Happy Fish in Myanmar. And I invited Chris Bonsi from WWF Myanmar to explain a little bit about free-flowing rivers in Myanmar and what WWF is doing there to protect them and to keep them free-flowing. So Chris, are you there?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Chris, where are you at the moment?
I'm in Yangon. It's a bit early in the morning, but it's great to be on this here with you guys, and it's super interesting. It's been keeping me up not all night, but most of the night.
Okay, hey, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so I've been given the opportunity to talk about a campaign we have here in Myanmar called Voices for Rivers, and a product that we have prepared for coming Fish Migration Day this Saturday. And I thought I'll give you just a very short intro to our rivers here in Myanmar. I think we've seen, others have shown this map today. These are the free-flowing rivers of globally. Dark blue, you can still see which large, long, free-flowing rivers are still free-flowing. And in the red circle, you see Myanmar, and here we have a little map of South Asia. On the left you see of the two dark blue rivers, the left one is the Irrawaddy, which is completely within Myanmar. On the right is the Salween, which is to a big part in Myanmar. We did look at the connectivity of rivers on a national level, and no big surprise, Myanmar still has, especially the long rivers are still very well connected, so free flowing. However, when and if the government goes ahead with building the hydropower plants they plan, all these rivers will cease to be free flowing. So maybe I have to say that here in Myanmar, society, economy, culture, religion is very, very strongly connected with rivers. These rivers are unique in terms of biodiversity. We don't really yet know what species live in them altogether. There's hundreds of species. Every time a serious research team goes to the rivers, they discover new species. So they're clearly unique. So this is something that we're trying to stop and protect the free flowingness of these rivers. I think I don't have to explain more to you guys. You know what I'm talking about. So so this is this campaign we've started, which is bringing together the different voices for rivers here in the country, and there are a lot of them already, especially within the civil society organizations. There has been a fight for protecting these rivers, but also local NGOs, and in science, there's more and more voices who call for the protection of these rivers. However, we international organizations, we can give them the scientific recognition of what their solutions. So this network mostly talks about the values of free flowing rivers, and shows different development options to have a sustainable development of these rivers. So yeah, Fish Migration Day on Saturday, a lot of activities we've planned. There's even, although there's COVID homestay orders, we do even have one trip to a river to show restoration of a part of a river part. But one of the big things we're also doing, we have a big panel discussion under the Department of Fisheries, which all of you are very welcome to join also. And of course, the fish migration animation that we're going to show in a minute. So yeah, this is our campaign. I think it started very strong. We have a strong network put up. However, there's a lot to do. We have good products for now, but it's going to be a long fight. So in the end, we'll also need more resources. So if one of you knows or has good access to resources, please contact us. We're always happy for more help. So yeah, so without further ado, I'm gonna, I think, hand over to Herman, because he has a better internet connection, and I want to make sure the animation streams well. So thank you very much for your attention. And I'll put some links into the chat. So for the people who want to have an early download of the animation, and please enjoy the animation.
Josh, can you hand over the share screen option? Yeah. Yeah, do you see it?
Yes, go ahead and maximize and hit play.
Here we go.
In Myanmar, we love fish. Fish are a crucial part of everyday life. They're a great source of protein and healthy fats, and they serve as a unique source of essential nutrients. Our rivers are among the richest in fish in the world, and 60% of the proteins we eat come from those fish. One reason why we can eat so much fish is that we have many naturally flowing rivers, including the last remaining long, free-flowing rivers in the world, the Irrawaddy and the Tanwin. Free-flowing rivers mean fish can travel, which is essential for them to find a mate, have babies, find food, and escape dangers like floods in the wet season. Myanmar has an extraordinarily large amount of different fish, and nearly all of them travel along the rivers, creeks, and wetlands. For example, the hikers in the upper and faster flowing waters, they migrate up and down the headwaters and tributaries of the great rivers. The commuters in the large middle and lower parts of the Irrawaddy constantly move back and forth from the wetlands to the river and the river delta. And lastly, the great wanderers. They travel thousands of kilometers upriver from the Andaman Sea to lay their eggs before migrating all the way back to the ocean. This movement means healthy fish, a healthy river ecosystem, and stability in the health, food, and income of the Myanmar people. But there's a problem. Man-made structures like dams and weirs are stopping fish from traveling. Solutions like fish passages are meant to help, but they only work in limited cases. Losing fish means an unhealthy river, unhealthy people, and an unhealthy economy. So, what can be done to ensure that Myanmar's fish can keep traveling? Simple. Keep the rivers free flowing. Award our rivers the heritage status that they deserve. Protecting Myanmar's globally unique rivers is essential if we are to develop sustainably. So become a voice for rivers. Share this video.
Fantastic, Christopher. Thank you so much for sharing. That is brilliant. Touches all the themes. Love the different fish that you included with it. It's really a magnificent video. Thank you so much. I'm going to just sum up a bit. We just have a little bit of time before the end of this webinar. Sorry. But this is just one of many events taking place around the world for World Fish Migration Day. And I think we have time for this quick trailer that I'm going to show you from Alaska, from Bristol Bay. I'm going to stop for just a second, make sure I have my settings right again. Nothing like sharing with the wrong settings on. Looks like we're good to go. Getting better at this, people. Hope you enjoy.
Everything is connected by water. Sea to cloud, cloud to rain, rain to river, river to sea. When you touch water in one place, you're touching it everywhere. The Pebble Limited Partnership have been trying to construct a copper mine in the headwaters of Bristol Bay's salmon country for decades, and an ominous threat descended once again onto Bristol Bay's future, and also onto mine.
How they can be hatched in these river systems, find their way out to sea, spend 2 or 3 years in the ocean, and come back to the exact same place that they were born. It's absolutely amazing to me how they can do that.
You can't not think about them somewhat mythically.
I think it's valuable to protect all of our wild places. We're running out of them.
If you want to see magic, come to Bristol Bay, Alaska, and you'll see magic.
Do we love salmon? I don't even know if love's
a strong enough word. It is who we are. It is who our people have been and who our people will continue to be.
And the statute says if we get a permit, EPA at that point can decide whether it wishes to veto this project. I don't think it will if we get a permit.
Some things are not for sale.
Well, unless we change our attitude towards wilderness, we're going to go down with the other species. We lose wild salmon, we're going to lose ourselves too. It's all there in nature, as far as I'm concerned.
We have messed up every other natural run in the world, except this one. And this being the last there is makes me want to pay attention more than I ever have.
And we're going to do it up here, and they ought to get ready for it.
Well, an amazing movie, and that'll be premiering in an event tomorrow that's going to benefit the local communities around Bristol Bay, as well as some of the organizations that are helping to fight that project. So if there's an opportunity, if you're interested to catch that, it's the Wild. It'll be tomorrow. Sort of, I think it's 7:30 our time. But let me move on from this and share with you just a few closing thoughts. Because we've talked a lot about the wonder of all this, but many of you might be wondering, well, what can I do? Well, I think the first thing to do is to sort of get inspired about this work, because you've been watching this video, and when you see these rivers in person, I find you can't help but be inspired and excited and care about it. People who don't get to see this stuff don't know what the heck you're talking about. So if we can get out there and get yourself excited and bring your friends, bring your family, you'll get better at sharing at it. You'll get better at your story. And I think that makes for a better sales pitch, really, to get other people engaged. Educate yourself so you know what you're talking about. Get the facts about barriers, the facts about river and these fish, so that you can share it and be knowledgeable when you talk to local officials, when you talk to local NGOs, when you talk to people like the Pebble Mine developers who clearly didn't see things the same way as the local community did up there in Alaska. And volunteer, there's a lot of ways to volunteer. One is helping out with committees. There's citizen science to learn more about where the barriers are and where the fish are. Super important stuff. And there's a lot of organizations around the country that are helping to do this. And donate. All these efforts need money. Julie gave a great talk about what's going on around the western part of the country. That private money is incredibly important for leveraging not only partnerships and some of the grunt work that needs to get done, but it leverages huge amounts of federal money that might not be able to come in otherwise. And speaking of federal money, another thing we need to do is to get out the vote. So be aware of issues around rivers and dams in your part of the world. Be aware of votes for funding for agencies that take care of and restore these rivers and streams, and get the word out through social media. It's like with some of these hashtags here, which you can all find on the World Fish Migration Day website, or go to worldfishmigrationfoundation.com, the organization that supports all of this. So what's next? Well, World Fish Migration Day officially kicks off in New Zealand in what is Friday evening for us, 3:40 p.m. Eastern Time. There'll be events kicking off in New Zealand. The Maori work around longfin eel has always been a highlight, has always been a traditional start for World Fish Migration Day, and it follows events around the entire planet. And for us, that makes things a little bit crazy if we want to watch Asia or Europe events. But if you're sleeping in just a little bit, you can still get up at a reasonable hour to see Africa, South America, or the Eurovision Fishy Finale, which is a song and video contest, which Nicole is going to give us a little sampler of in just a minute. And then for North America, between 4, and I didn't correct that, it's between 4 and 5:30, we'll have North America, which will be highlighting people zooming into their spots, some live interviews, and that filmmaker Mark Titus from The Wild will be there as well. So that's my summary. I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. Nicole is going to kick off a video from the Eurofishing contest. Nicole, when you are ready. And Nicole, we're not hearing it. Maybe stop sharing and check those audio settings.
Yes, let me do that real fast.
We're all patient here.
Mhm.
Nicole Friedman is the World Fish Migration Foundation Fellow, and she's working from her place in Colorado right now. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Nicole. And thank you, Herman, for your and your team's ideas about this, and everyone on the team for making this event so successful. It's been a rewarding and fun way to make the best of the situation we're in. And it's wonderful to see all the heart and soul and creativity come into this work, because we need it. We need every bit of excitement and all the talent we can bring. So thanks to everyone for bringing what they did to this webinar. I see there's great things in the chat. I'm not sure if questions have been answered. In the question and answer, there's 8 things that have been answered already. And you will get a recording of this video to look at later. And I think you will also, I think all our participants agreed to have their emails put out there so that you can email them individually with your questions as well. So with that, I want to thank everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon or evening if you're on the East Coast. And for Herman, it's well past your bedtime in the Netherlands. So I hope everyone has a good night. And you can feel free, panelists, to unmute and say so long. But thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys, for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.